Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to Temple Bethel Salinas, and happy Hanukkah to everyone. We will open our service with the singing of Hanukkah, O Hanukkah, which can be found on page 365 in the Mishkan Tefillah for Shabbat. And then we will light our Hanukkah. Rick and Nancy will light the Hanukkah. We will sing Hanerot Hallelu, and then we will light the Shabbat candles and continue with our Kabbalat Shabbat evening service. Page 365, O Hanukkah, O Hanukkah. O Hanukkah, O Hanukkah, come light the menorah. Let's have a party, we'll all dance the hora. Gather round the table, we'll give you a treat. Sivivon to play with and latkes to eat. And while we are playing, the candles are burning low. One for each night, they shed a sweet light to remind us of days long ago. One for each night, they shed a sweet light to remind us of days long ago. O Hanukkah, a festival of joy, a holiday, a jolly day for every girl and boy. Spin the whirling dreidels all week long. Eat the sizzling latkes, sing a happy song. Now light them tonight then, the flickering candles in a row. Retell the wondrous story of God's eternal glory and dance by the candles' cheering glow. Retell the wondrous story of God's eternal glory and dance by the candles' cheering glow. So now we just need some candles and their cheering glow. So Nancy Makita and Rick Hughes will light our Hanukkah, the 6th night of Hanukkah, and the blessings are on page 279, the Hanukkah blessings. They kind of have to jump around in this book to find the blessings, 279. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Chanukah. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asa nisim la'avoteinu, bayamim hahem, bazman hazeh. Hanerot hallelu anachnu madlikim. We kindle these lights because of the wondrous deliverance you performed for our ancestors during these 8 days of Hanukkah. These lights are sacred. We are not to use them, but only to behold them, so that their glow may rouse us to give thanks for your wondrous acts of deliverance.
Amen.
And now we're ready for our Shabbat candles. Oh, they're right ahead of me. Thank you, Rick. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Page 12, we welcome the Sabbath, Lechuneranana. Lechuneranana, 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 ladonai. Lechuneranana, 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 ladonai. Naria, naria, litzuri, shenu nekad mavana betoda. Naria, naria, litzuri, shenu, bizmirot naria lo. Lechuneranena, 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 ladonai. Lechuneranena, 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 ladonai. Page 20, please join me in singing Lechadodi. Lechadodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Lechadodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Lechadodi, lechadodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Lechadodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Hishmi'anu el hamyuchad, Adonai echad, Ushemo echad, Le'shemu tiferet be'liti la. Lechadodi, lechadodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Lechadodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, Ki mekor habaracha, Merosh mikedem nesucha, Sof maaseh b'machshavat achila. Lechadodi, lechadodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Lechadodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Verse 5, the top of page 21. Hitoreri, hitoreri, Kiva orech kumi ori, uri, uri, shir daberi, Kevod Adonai alaich nigla. Lechadodi, lechadodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Lechadodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Verse 9, and we rise. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, Gam b'simcha uvetzola, Toch emunei am segula, Boi chala, boi chala. Lechadodi, lechadodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Lechadodi likrat kala, Penei Shabbat nekabela. Please be seated. We continue with Shalom Aleichem on page 24. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Lai, 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 la, lai, 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 la, lai, 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 lai. Baruch Hu Nile Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzetechem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mimelech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Lai, 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 la, la, lai, 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 la, la, lai, 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 lai. Page 26. Yitgadal ve'yitgadash shemei Rabba, ve'amad yivrach yirutei ve'amlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyom echon, uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, bagala, bagala, uvizman karim, ve'immeru. Yehi Shmei Rabba mevorach, le'olam olam me'amaya, yitbarach, yitbarach, ve'yishtabach, v'yitbar, v'yitramam, v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, Shemei Kodeshah. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, ta'amiron be'alma ve'immeru. And our call to worship, Baruch Hu, is on page 28. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach, Le'olam Va'ed. Please be seated. Please join me together on page 30. Baruch Atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, b'chochma poteach she'arim, uvit vuna mishane itim, umachalif et hazmanim, umasader et hakochavim, b'mishmerotehem barakia kirtzono, bore yom v'layla golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or, uma'avir yom umevi laila, umavdil bein yom uvein laila, Adonai tzivaot shemo. El chai v'kayam, tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim. El chai v'kayam, tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim. wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol. All these things your Torah gives to us. And the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works and the living language that gives it form? Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. We rise, Shema Yisrael, page 34. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Please be seated. We continue on the top of page 36. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meodecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha ukshartam leot al yadecha ve'hayu letotafot beineinecha uchtavtam al mizuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kiroshim lelohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem emet. We continue on page 39. Please join me responsively. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way.
Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces.
Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed.
Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea.
Page 40. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh, norot ilot osefele. Malchutecha ra'uvanecha bokei ayam, lifnei Moshe u'Miriam, ze Elianu ve'ameru, Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed. Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed. Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed. V'ne'amar kivada Adonai et Yaakov ugealo miyad hazak mimenu. Baruch atah Adonai Gal Yisrael. Page 42. Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, l'shalom. Vehamidenu shomreinu l'chayim. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. Amen. Shelter us beneath thy wings, O Adonai. Guard us from all harmful things, O Adonai. Keep us safe throughout the night, till we wake with morning's light. Teach us, God, wrong from right. Amen. 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 We continue with Tefillah on page 46. And we rise. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi agi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, let my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Velohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Velohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Velohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chastei Avot V'imahot, U'mevi Gula Livnei V'neihem, Lema'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Be'ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayei hakol atah Rav lehoshia, Mashiv haruach u'morid hagashem, Mechalkel chayim bechesed, Mechayei hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim verofe cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato, Lishenei afar, Michamocha ba'al givurot, למען אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. Please be seated. We continue on page 58. And then when we pray the middle paragraph, we're going to turn to page 264. So you can see how it says on Hanukkah, continue on page 264. You can see that in the middle of page 58. Modim anachnu lak, shatahu Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu v'yimotenu le'olam va'ed, tzur chayenu magen yishenu atahu ledor vador. We acknowledge together with thanks that you are Adonai our God and the God of our ancestors forever. You are the rock of our lives and the shield of our salvation in every generation. Let us thank you and praise you for our lives which are in your hand, for our souls which are in your care, for your miracles that we experience every day, and for your wondrous deeds and favors at every time of day, evening, morning, and noon. O good one, whose mercies never end, O compassionate one, whose kindness never fails. We forever put our hope in you. Put your finger there and jump over to page 264. Nisim ve'al hapurkon ve'al hagvurot ve'al hachuot ve'al hamilchamot she'asita lavotenu vayamim hahem bazman hazeh. Al hanisim ve'al hapurkon ve'al hagvurot ve'al hachuot ve'al hamilchamot she'asita lavotenu vayamim hahem bazman hazeh. In the English, together, we thank you for the miracles, for the redemption, for the mighty deeds and saving acts brought about by you, and for the wars which you waged for our ancestors in the days of old at this season. And now we continue back to page 60. And we pause for silent prayer.
Is it today Rosh Chodesh too?
Is it?
Well, the moon disappeared.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Page 60. Ki atahu melech adon lecho hashalom. Ki atahu melech adon lecho hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam Tasim Leolam. We're going to go right to the Torah service. We have a lot to do tonight. Page 244, and we rise as the Torah is taken out of the ark. And we are going to start with Av HaRachamim Heitiv Avirtzoncha Et Zion Tivni Chomot Yerushalayim Tivne Chomot Yerushalayim Kivecha levad batachnu Melech el Ram v'nisa Adon Olamim, page 246. Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah, Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah, Udevar Adonai Mirushalayim, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah, Le'amo Yisrael, B'kdushato, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo, Gadol Adonai Iti, Uneromama Shemo Yachdav, Lecha Adonai Hagedula, Ve'Hagedura, Ve'Ativeret, Ve'Hanetzach, Ve'Hod, Ki Cho Bashamayim Uvaretz, Ki Cho Bashamayim Uvaretz, Lecha Adonai Yamlacha, Ya'id Naseh Lechol Erosh. Are you the Aliyah then? Ira, would you like the honor of the Aliyah? No, that's okay. Aaron, how about you? This evening, we are in Miketz, and towards the end of the book of Genesis, we're almost at the end.
Chapter 41.
Chapter 41, we're getting close to the end. And in this portion, Pharaoh has two troubling dreams, which Rick will start for us. And at the suggestion of his baker, who remembers Joseph from prison, Pharaoh brings Joseph to interpret the dreams. And Pharaoh is so impressed by Joseph that he makes him his advisor. There is a famine. Jacob sends his sons minus Benjamin to Egypt to buy food. They do not recognize Joseph when they meet him. Joseph tests his brothers by accusing them of being spies. And towards the end of the Parsha, Joseph arrests Simeon and demands the brothers bring Benjamin to Egypt to prove they are not spies. When Benjamin arrives, Joseph puts a goblet in Benjamin's bag and accuses him of stealing it. It's like all these things that go on in the book of Genesis. Ya'amod Aharon ben Meir.
Baruch es Adonai Hamvorah.
Baruch
Adonai Hamvorach leolam vaed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach leolam vaed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim. V'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen.
ויהי מקץ שנתיים, excuse me, ויהי מקץ שנתיים ימים, ופרעה חולם, והנה עומד על היאור, והנה מן היאור עולות 7 פרות יפות מראה, ובריאות בשר, ותראנה באחו, והנה 7 פרות אחרות, עולות אחריהן מן היאור, רעות מראה ודקות בשר, ותעמודנה אצל הפרות על שפת היאור. ותאכלנה הפרות רעות המראה ודקות הבשר, את 7 הפרות יפות המראה והבריאות. ויקץ פרעה, וישן, ויחלום שנית, והנה 7 שבלים עולות בקנה אחד, בריאות וטובות, והנה 7 שבלים דקות ושדופה קדים, צומחות אחריהן, ותבלנה השבלים הדקות את 7 השבלים הבריאות והמלאות, ויקץ פרעה. והנה חלום, ויהי בבוקר, וטיפ העם רוחו, וישלח ויקרא אל כל חרטומי מצרים, ואת כל חוכמיה, ויספר פרעה להם את חלמו, ואין פוטר אותם.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu torat emet, v'chayei olam netab betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen. And it was at the end of 2 complete years that Pharaoh had a dream. And look, he was standing beside the Nile. And look, from the Nile came up 7 good-looking cows, good to look at, and robust in their flesh. And they grazed on the reed marshes, the marsh reeds. And look, 7 other cows came up after them from the river, and they were ugly to look at, and they were thin in flesh, and they stood next to the cows on the banks of the Nile. And the ugly-looking cows ate up the ugly-looking and thin cows ate up the other cows, the other 7 cows, who were good-looking and well in their flesh. And Pharaoh woke up. And then he went to sleep, and he dreamed again a second time. And look, 7 ears of grain came up on one single stalk, and they were good to look at, and they were good to see. And look, seven thin, meager ears of grain, blasted by the east wind, were growing up after them. And the meager grains gobbled up the 7 ears of grain that were good to look at and that were full. And Pharaoh woke up, and look, it was a dream. And in the morning, Pharaoh's spirit was disturbed, and he sent for and called all the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men. And Pharaoh told them about his dream, but they had no interpretation for Pharaoh.
That was appropriate. You had the Aliyah. We pause in front of the open Torah for our prayers of healing, Misha Berach. These prayers can be found on page 253. Misha Berach Avotenu ve'imotenu Avraham ve'Yitzchak ve'Yaakov Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, ve'Leah hu yivarech et, all of those names that we named this evening. Loretta Higgins,
Nelson Drudy, Fred Vincent, Robert Shaw,
Sylvia Seaman,
Jeanette Lemaire,
Elizabeth Trady, and Mary Crosby.
Loris Rosa, Sarah Siegel, Sandy Lear, Maxine Crawford.
may the Holy One, our blessed Holy One, be filled with compassion for their health to be recovered and restored, their strength to be revived, and may God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit. And let us say, Amen. And we prepare to return the Torah to the Ark, page 252. Yamod Hagma Bezot HaTorah Asher Sa Moshe Livnei Bnei Yisrael Api Adonai Beyad Moshe. We are on page, oh, this prayer book drives me crazy. 256. Please be seated. And I now call to the bima the Temple Bethel Hanukkah players. We will huddle around. I have a mask somewhere. Okay.
Are we masking?
Well, I guess we're not, because otherwise they won't hear us. So you have to get close to, I know you don't need to. This is a Hanukkah story.
The Latka Who Couldn't Stop Screaming. A Christmas Story by Lemony Snicket. This story ends in someone's mouth, but it begins in a tiny village more or less covered in snow. The snow had fallen during the long night, during which children had pressed their faces to the windows, looking for a glimpse of a man who they suspected of bringing them wonderful gifts. But instead, they heard a terrible noise from a certain cottage in the neighboring arrondissement, a word which here means place where something was being born. This cottage was already regarded with some suspicion, as it was the only place not decorated with flashing colored lights at this time of year. The thing that was being born was a latka, a word which here means potato pancake. Latkes are a traditional part of the celebration of Hanukkah, a holiday commemorating a miraculous Jewish military victory. Nearly everything in this world is born screaming, and the latka was no exception, even though the latka wasn't conceived and born the way you and I were conceived and born, but instead was fashioned from grated potatoes, chopped onion, beaten eggs, and a dash or two of salt. Once these ingredients were properly mixed, the latke was slapped into a pan full of olive oil, heated to a very high temperature, and this is when it began to scream. The latke was suffering so much that it leapt out of the hot pan and out of the window of the cottage and began to run, screaming down the boulevard. This may seem like unusual behavior for a potato pancake, but this is a Christmas story in which things tend to happen that would never occur in real life. This latka ran past a row of flashing colored lights which hung from the rain gutters of a less suspicious cottage.
What's all the ruckus? We're the ones who were supposed to be dominating the neighborhood with our cheerful glow.
Hold on.
Latka.
I was just thrown into a pan of boiling oil.
The latka cried in reply.
Can you believe it?
Yes.
said the flashing colored lights.
We can't imagine why.
Because I'm a latke.
Said the latke.
The olive oil reminds us of the oil used to rededicate the temple following the defeat of Antiochus at the hands of the Maccabees. The oil was only supposed to last for one night, but there was a miracle, and it lasted for 8. Plus, frying makes my skin crispy and brown.
So, you're basically hash browns.
Said the flashing colored lights.
Maybe you should be served alongside a Christmas ham.
I'm not hash browns.
Cried the latke.
I'm something completely different.
And again. The latke rounded the corner and found itself face to face with a candy cane, which wrinkled its red and white nose at the latke in distaste.
Ugh, I'm trying to sprinkle the night with my peppermint scent.
The candy cane said.
Your mouth-watering smell, not to mention all that yelping, it spoiled my effect.
My mouth-watering smell is part of the cozy feeling of Hanukkah.
The latke replied.
It reminds us that things are better now than they were in 175 BCE, when my people were not allowed to practice their religion, and in order to study Torah, everyone had to hide out in caves, and when they heard the Greek soldiers approaching, they pretended they were gambling with a small spinning top called a dreidel.
Sort of like Joseph and Mary hiding out in the manger,
Said the candy cane.
Someone should write a Christmas card about you.
I'm not part of Christmas.
Cried the latke.
It's a totally different thing.
Mm.
Ah! Ah! You should see the pictures.
The screams of the latke grew quieter and quieter as the pancake ran out of the village into the surrounding forest. Its utter fury was unabated, a phrase which here means the latke was still very annoyed at the objects to whom it had spoken. But it was quite tired, and so it decided to rest for a few minutes beneath the branches of a little pine tree. The pine tree was napping, but woke up at the sound of an object plopping down at its feet.
Are you a present?
The pine tree asked.
Presents are pretty much the only thing that are allowed to sit beneath me during the time of year.
The latke sighed.
Presents aren't really a big part of Hanukkah.
It said in a voice, hoarse from screaming.
There's nothing wrong with giving gifts to loved ones, of course, but it's more important to light the candles for 8 consecutive nights to commemorate the miracle in the temple and the miracle of victory even when you are thoroughly outnumbered, and you shouldn't give up hope.
Plus Santa Claus.
Said the pine tree. The latke was too exhausted to scream.
Santa Claus has nothing to do with it.
The latke said.
But different things can often blend. Christmas and Hanukkah are completely different things.
But different things can often blend together.
Said the pine tree.
Let me tell you a funny story about a pagan ritual.
But before the pine tree could begin its story, a family came trooping through the snow, searching the forest carefully.
We shouldn't have waited until the last minute to get ready for the holiday.
Said the father in the family, who was holding an axe.
We'll never find a good one. You shouldn't give up hope.
Said the mother, and pointed at the pine tree.
Look, it's perfect.
Said the daughter.
Beautiful.
Agreed the son.
Such a marvelous shape.
Said the mother.
And the skin looks too crispy, so crispy.
Said the father, and reached down and scooped up the latke from the snow.
We'll need to reheat it, of course, but this will be the perfect for Hanukkah dinner with a topping of applesauce, some sour cream, and even jam. I'll refry it in oil
Said the mother.
to remind us of the rededication of the temple. And the triumph of the Maccabees over Antiochus.
added the daughter.
And hiding in caves all that time.
The son chimed in. The father smiled down at the latke in his mitten, and then stared curiously at his other hand.
What was I thinking bringing this axe?
He said to himself. The family strolled back to the village, walking past all the cottages with flashing colored lights, and smiling politely at the candy canes until they reached their home. The family carried the latke into their own home, which was warm and cozy, and sat down at the table, which was lit with the flickering candles of a menorah, or Hanukkah, which is a branched candelabra designed specifically for the holiday. It was very frustrating not to be understood in this world. If you say one thing and keep being told that you mean something else, it can make you want to scream. But somewhere in the world, there is a place for all of us, whether you are an electric form of decoration, peppermint-scented sweet, or a source of timber, or a potato pancake. On a cold, snowy night, everyone and everything should be welcomed somewhere. And the latke was welcomed into a home full of people who understood what a latke is and how it fits into its particular holiday. And then they ate it.
The end. Thank you, Hanukkah players. Temple Bethel players.
Shabbat Shalom. Happy Hanukkah. I forgot to find my Huber to go with the Torah portion, but that's okay. We just had a fine story. But just to balance out, we need a story about sufganiyot, the jelly donuts. And two main differences of these two stories is, one, there's no screaming in this one. And two, this is a true story. About 20 years ago, well, every year we've had a Hanukkah dinner. Now, I was sitting there at a table with some people I didn't really know, and someone said, well, what's the deal with I understand about the latkes, but what's the deal with the jelly donuts? So I started to explain. I said there was a man who opened a new bakery in Jerusalem. And it was shortly before Hanukkah. And the people came, but it wasn't exactly crowds. He says, I need something special for Hanukkah. Well, his wife had made a lot of jams, hadn't put away. And she said, well, let's use some of my jam. I know, so something different. Let's put it inside the donuts. So they advertised this big Hanukkah special with jelly donuts. And, some people tried it and they spread the word. It was a big success. So anyway, fast forward 1 year. Sitting there at the Hanukkah dinner, and there were some people I didn't particularly know, some I knew. And sure enough, somebody said, what's this deal about jelly donuts? Why are we eating jelly donuts for Hanukkah? And another person sitting at the table said, well, see, there was a man who opened a new bakery in Jerusalem just before Hanukkah. And I couldn't help laugh. I made up the whole darn story, and here it was a year later, somebody else was telling that fake story about the jelly donuts. And this is all true. So I didn't hear it the third year, so who knows. So if anybody asks you why we're eating jelly donuts, now you know. And of course, tomorrow we will be eating latkes and jelly donuts. 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock, we'll have lots of singing, I think, and games and little kids. So it should be fun. So I hope to see you there. Next week is also a busy week. There'll be two special services. There'll be the Young Family Service at 4:45 right here with the little kids. And then on Saturday morning, we'll be at Ivy Park again. So hope you can come to that. And of course, Friday night also. Also, Dorothy's Kitchen is that same week. So keep busy.
Would you say Saturday morning is?
Saturday morning next week at 10 o'clock at Ivy Park. The former Billisera.
Ivy Park service. There's a chapel at Ivy Park. With our
Okay, and there's tour study tomorrow morning on Zoom. There's board meeting this week on Zoom. If you're ever interested in attending, make sure that Cantor or I know, and we'll send you the link. And thank me for the zoning tonight. Actually, it's partly leftovers for 2 weeks ago, so I think they're okay. But there's something new. No jelly donuts. But I did make dreidel cookies, which I make every year. That's my tradition. Okay, I think that's it, and we'll continue on so we can get to the goodies.
Tomorrow, just show up? Do you need to know if it's...
Well, we were
We
asking
already
people,
counted you.
yeah, we were asking people to RSVP but it's a little late to do that, so
Right.
just show up.
Right.
We expect that to happen.
We knew you were coming. And we knew Howard and Rebecca, so,
This is the gang.
yeah,
The usual suspect.
yeah. We kind of planned for that. Page 282, and we rise. Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol, latekrun al yotzer breishi, shelo asanu kagoye haratzon, velo somanu kamishpachot ha'adama, shelo som chalkeinu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam, va'anachnu goraim, umishtachavim umorim, lifnei melech, malchei hamlachim, hakadosh baruch hu. V'ne'emar, v'haya Adonai, lemelech al kol haaretz, hayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad. Please be seated. Our thoughts turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people, whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation, whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. In our temple family, in the period of Shloshim, we are remembering Kara Schneider, Arthur Winter, and Phyllis Torin. And we mark the yahrzeits of Arlene Zatuni Sharp, David Kaufman, Isidore Horwitz, Benny Grossman, Henry Sampson, Ruth Warsaw, Bruce Thurston, David Castle, Louis A. Hirsch, Rose Schoenbrunn, Samuel Greenfield, Erwin Cafton, and Geneva Speed, and any other names you are remembering this evening.
Abigail Cohen, Dr. David Lemaire.
We rise 294, Kaddish Yatom. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'almad yivrach yiruteh v'yamlich malchuteh, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayeh l'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'bizman kariv ve'imru, amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam v'lalmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, v'yitale, v'yitalal, shemei d'kudisha, la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, ta'amiran ve'alma ve'imru, yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all Israel, to which we say, Amen. Please be seated. Thank you, Nancy, for the oneg. We will close on page 365, Ma'otzur. Ma'otzur Yeshuati, Lecha na'e l'shabeach, Tikon beit tefilati, V'sham toda nezabeach, Li'etachid matbiach, Mitzar amnabeach, Az egmor b'shir mizmor, Hanukat hamizbeach. Az egmor b'shir mizmor, Hanukat hamizbeach. Shabbat shalom.